everyone, and welcome to the RTS Northwest First Steps into Television and RTS Student Award briefing session. My name is Laurie Kirkham. I'm the Head of Development at Leopard Pictures, based out of Liverpool. Before that, I was a script editor at Red Production Company out of Manchester. I was born in the Northwest and I am now acting secretary for the RTS Northwest. So all of the work that the RTS does is very close to my heart, and I'm very excited to be talking to you all today. So first off, I'd love to introduce my panellists. Unfortunately, our third, Marco, has been unable to attend today, but hopefully between us, we'll be able to fill in the blanks. So with me today, I have Ruth Bader. Hello, Ruth. A Ruth producer at Screenhouse Productions. And also we have Ethan Blake Brooks, who is a freelance shooting AP and winner of an RTS Student Award, which is obviously very exciting and something that we're going to talk about a lot today. So before we kick off, I'm just going to give you a little overview of what we're going to discuss. This is going to be a really informal chat where we kind of talk about the industry, demystifying how you get into it, where we all started, and then we'll then go into a bit of information about the criteria for entry for the Student Awards. I'm going to give you a little bit of info about the student networking event that we put on each year. And at the end, then there'll be a section for us to do a bit of a Q&A. So if you do have any questions, then please do put them in the chat. And our lovely tech guys, Joe and Ben, will forward those questions over to me. We might not have time to get through everything, but we'll do our best to answer as much as we can. Okay, so first of all, I will talk about our fantastic panel. So obviously we've had a little bit of an intro for everybody, but first off, I would love to ask some questions. So the annoying ones, before we understand exactly who you are who are you, what are you currently working on, and what is your role? So as an example, my name's Laurie, I'm the head of development, and my role is about driving the development slate forward, working with writers in drama and comedy. So we're very much a scripted indie and helping people realize their ideas. And then the hard bit, which is getting people to make them. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm going to go to you first, Ruth, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Ruth. I'm from Leeds originally, and I work in Leeds again now. I am a producer and I work across development. So that's thinking of new ideas for films, production, sort of making the films happen, setting them up, convincing people to take part and actually getting them done on the day. And I'm also an edit producer, so that means the sort of non-technical side of sorting the story out in post with what we actually end up shooting. And at the moment I work on short films, which we call VTs, for the One show on BBC One. I don't work directly for them, I work for an independent company that makes those films.
Okay, and Ethan, over to you.
Hi, my name's Ethan. I'm currently a shooting AP for an indie production company based in Bristol at the moment, and I've been doing that for a few months now. Yeah, the role of shooting assistant producer. Assistant producer is quite a broad spectrum, which is why I think it's something that's so fun, and there's a lot of variety to it. Me specifically, obviously, it's in the name of shooting, so I'm often present during shoots. In a shooting capacity, either working first or second camera, supporting the director, as well as helping to prepare the logistics of the shoot, both on sort of the compliance and production management side, on top of editorial as well. So sometimes getting rough scripts going to pass on to the directors, also dealing with contributors. But yeah, as I say, quite a wide spectrum, but that's what makes it so interesting.
Okay, so the next question I'm going to ask is such a hard one to answer in television. So just as a heads up, this is a biggie, I would say. So the thing that I would say is, for me, every single day of my job feels very different. So one day I might be working with a writer on an idea. The next day I might be meeting a commissioner. The next day I might be doing research into something, and like my internet history probably looks absolutely crazy because one day we'll be looking into, I don't know, like hydrogen bombs, and then the next week we'll be looking into, you know, fairy tales, and it so varies depending on what kind of project you're working on. But if you had to boil it down in terms of what a typical day does look like in your roles, I'll go to you first, Ethan.
Yeah, sure. So if we're going from the start, usually it's in sort of like the research phase, in terms of research briefs, having many chats, both with your contributors and also with your team, and making sure that you're communicating just as well as you are above as you are downwards as well, and making sure that you're obviously mitigating those well. Once we have got the research together and we've sort of got the fundamentals of a structure that we want for a program, then we go into the scripting process. So you'll often find that it also depends on the size of the production company as well. Sometimes with the smaller indies, you might be juggling a few more additional roles, and each one can have pros and cons. So there's also the chance that you can gain more experience in that, take on more responsibility, which is what some people want, especially if you're looking to maybe go into the next step. But you could also work for a bigger production company where perhaps the roles are a little bit more precise and the makeup of each team is very different because each program has a different need and a different requirement. Obviously, once we go through the scripting, then it's straight into the shooting and the filming. Something that I'm across quite a lot, so I'd probably say I'm a lot more production rather than pre and post. It can be quite reactive, it can be quite fast paced. So if that's something that you thrive in, and that's something that you could potentially benefit from. And so yeah, sort of half between the office, half on location shooting. And then post-production obviously just as important, and making sure that you have a record of everything that happened on that shoot, everything is noted down, for your editor, for your director, for the series producer. And essentially, for me, my mantra is if it's not written down, then it doesn't exist. So yeah.
Thank you, Ethan. Okay, how about you, Ruth?
Yeah, well, I think Ethan's definitely touched on some points that I would totally agree with there, in that your role can depend not just on what stage of career that you're at or your genre that you're working in, but the type of company. I've worked at big companies like RDF and True North, which is a bigger indie based in Leeds and Manchester. And at the moment, I'm working in a really small indie, and our coordinator was off the other day, so I had to write up the call sheet because she was away and we'd had to get a shoot done. Yeah. So to sort of answer your question in a way, a sort of politician's way, I'll answer a slightly different question. My typical week is probably easier to distill down. So on this Monday, for instance, I was researching and writing up a treatment to try and pitch a new film. So that involved sort of speaking to academics and experts and trying to distill down this really sort of detailed research into a film idea that's really popular and that we can do in 4.5 minutes, and that a 10-year-old could understand, or an 85-year-old, that sort of accessible to everyone. And much like Laurie, we're trying to kind of not just make that a good idea, but kind of to sell it to commissioners and say, let us make this, give us some money to make this. We think
give us all your money.
Give us all your money, or in the case of One Show VTs, some of your money. So that's what we do. That was what I was doing on Monday. And then the next day I could be setting up a shoot, which would involve kind of talking to my team, to my APs and researchers, and making sure that we kind of are talking to locations, and that involves, sending them on recce's, negotiating fees, talking to contributors, and be anything from, a really fun story about a Christmas market to something quite deep and emotional to do with, someone's quite difficult past in a relationship or a bereavement, something like that. So that could be good fun, or it could be quite sensitive, talking to contributors, maintaining those relationships, but also getting that information that we need. Then it's my job to write the script. So I'll write up that script, even though it's actual. Obviously, we're still writing scripts in a very different way to Laurie's work. I'm on the shoot. Sometimes I'm directing. Sometimes I'm working with a director. I don't shoot, so I might direct someone like Ethan, and I'd sort of come along and be across the kind of editorial content I'm expecting people to say, and then I'd be asking the shooter to be thinking about the visuals and the sequences a little bit more. And then once we've done all the shooting, the next day I would be working with an editor, and they would send me what we call the sync pulls, which is just the kind of the bits that people said with my voice blissfully cut out of the interviews. And then I basically transcribe them and send back what we call a paper edit and say, please cut this bit out and please leave this bit in. And then I do, the guide commentary, the guide voiceover to create the film that the commissioner will eventually sign off. All the way through to voiceover and even then the delivery paperwork. So at the moment, my job's brilliant because it's quite rare in telly really now. I'm sure you guys will agree. I'm going through from thinking of an idea to getting it delivered in the edit. So it's every element of it really. And yeah, so I'm called a producer, but I'm also an edit producer and a development producer at the moment.
Well, so the thing that you've both said that strikes me is that, so I thought when I first started, I thought maybe that before I knew what a script editor did, as an example, I used to think that maybe they just did spelling mistakes, right? And it was just about that. And then you get into it and you realize it's absolutely not that, it's creative, but it's also, putting out fires and creative problem solving, which even though we're all in kind of different genres, that is the same, I would say, across the board for television. And I think from a scripted point of view, so for us, like specifically as a script editor or anyone working in development, you've got the development side, but you've also got the production side as well. So like, yeah, my favored route is that, the people that are working on the projects at a development stage get to see that through and then work on the production, but they are so different, aren't they? And then you get into something like the post period, and then that throws up a whole new kettle of fish because there's so many things to consider. So I think the thing that we've all kind of agreed on is that it's different every day and you have to kind of roll with the punches, but that's the exciting thing about it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, at the moment, I'm, for example, very broad in what I'm doing. I'm going all the way through from A to Z. But I've also previously, in other roles, done just one element of that. And that's partly because we've got to get it done quicker. So yeah. I've got to carry on doing development while someone else is doing production, or I've got to carry on production and I just hand it over to an edit producer because I've got another shoot to go on. So depending on how big the show is and how big the team is, it's stacked different ways.
Yeah.
So it takes me a bit longer to do it because I do every stage. Whereas on a bigger production, you'd be handing off those rushes, you'd be handing off that footage and cracking on with the next. So yeah, it is incredibly varied, and there's no one way of doing it. And I think as well, you can become really specialised if you want to. At the stage of entering, you don't need to worry about that at all. I think the world of telly is your oyster at that stage, isn't it? You could go anywhere and absolutely don't need to decide ever, or it's certainly not at the beginning.
Ruth, you've unintentionally segued into my next question really, really naturally. So thank you very much. So my next question is, what made you want to work in the area that you do? And also, like, what excites you? Because as I say, I was at university at Salford and I thought, I knew I wanted to work in scripts, but I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't necessarily know what a script editor was or what a head of development does. And I think that it was, I started off myself script reading, and I'll get into the questions about how we did our first jobs in the next section. But the thing for me was that once I realized that was an opportunity, that there was a role like that existed, I just thought I was crazy about telly and books. And then actually when I saw someone doing it, I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to work with writers. I want to help them realize their visions. And that was the thing that really appealed to me. But yeah, to put the question back to you, Ethan. So, why this genre and what excites you about it?
Yeah, I think the beauty of unscripted and documentary is you just never quite know what you're going to get. You could have the most fleshed out idea, tons and tons of development research, tons and tons of development budget, and it can end up as something completely different. And I just think that's absolutely amazing, because I think that's part of the exciting thing is the unpredictability and the surprises that come with it. And for me, what excites me the most about documentary and factual, and I guess excites me as much as I feel is that it's a privilege, is to experience communities, people's ideas that you would have never bumped into had you not been in this role. I've done documentaries on the deaf community, which is for me, as a deaf individual myself that hasn't come from a deaf culture background, has been a massive privilege to me. Through to last year, when I was filming for Tournament, which is a documentary series that's just come out now on BBC One and it's just been released. And looking at the fishing community and the extreme highs and the extreme lows and that, all of those things that I not only get to film but see with my own two eyes and get that just it's never a bad thing to gain those experiences and to gain different mindsets and different opinions, and I think it's great for your professional growth and as much as it is your personal growth. So yeah.
I totally agree, because fundamentally we're all storytellers, right? Even though like we do different things, like that's the thing that I think has probably hooked us all in. And so what about you, Ruth? What excites you, and why did you pursue this particular genre?
Well, I'd absolutely agree with Ethan that it is a kind of an extraordinary privilege of our job that we get to just meet so many different people who you would never come across ever. You'd never get a chance to be in a room with them, and that's from the very fun. Like, we made a film with like Benny from ABBA this year, which was just one of those stupid moments where you're like, is this my job? Is this what I'm doing? Interviewing Benny from ABBA. To the kind of much more sensitive, where you're with people at some of the most difficult moments of their lives, and they're letting you tell their really, really challenging stories, and letting you kind of trusting you. And I think that's a real privilege as well. And that's probably the moments that I'm proudest of. I think the thing I could probably speak to that's different to Ethan is the development side and the edit production side. I didn't know really that was a job when I was at uni. I didn't know that being a development producer was a thing. I spent sort of half my career in development, which is the thinking up of and writing new ideas. And some people hate it because you're not actually making telly, and it's quite kind of cerebral, and you have to constantly think of ideas. And it's not like, it's not about having one big idea. It's about having multiple ideas every day and then turning them into actual programs, which is quite a big leap from thinking, oh, what about this, to saying, and this is how we do it, and this is why you should give us hundreds of thousands of pounds to make it. And I didn't know that existed, and it taps into a lot of things I really enjoyed doing that I didn't know you could do in a job, which is a lot of writing. So I didn't really know that, particularly copywriting, so like writing a kind of magazine article or like kind of sell something in a pitch document, didn't know that was part of telly. I thought you either wrote Doctor Who, or you didn't really write anything. I didn't know that you could do that, so that was a very pleasant surprise. And so that really appealed to me about development, and it's changed a lot. When I first started doing it, people had started to talk about these really visual proposals, and that was this new. It makes me sound really old. I'm not, obviously, but now proposals are really, really visual, and actually kind of a bit of kind of graphic design and visual design within documents is something I really I'd always enjoyed kind of faffing around with Word documents and making them look pretty, and that had evolved into various other design tools. I love doing that, and I've got a bit of a knack for it, and I think I didn't know that was a skill that would be useful. So I used that a lot, really enjoyed that with development, and you still get all those good bits, which is like talking to people, being creative, thinking of, how do I turn this newspaper headline into a film? What's the journey from, oh, that's interesting, to this is what I'm going to see? And you do all of that. You're not doing that over 2 or 3 months to make it happen. You're doing that in a meeting, and then you go and writing it down, and you're convincing someone to make it. So that was really kind of compressed and exciting. And the other benefit of that often isn't talked about is if you work in development, quite often you're working with the really senior people in the company. So even as my first development job, I was working with these people who were creative directors and development executives, and I'm, my second job ever. And you've access to these amazing people who've had these incredible careers. Because often it's the big bosses who are doing development. So that's exciting for development for me. Again, some people hate it because they're just like, stop talking, let's go and do some filming. But I quite like talking and writing. post-production, which is edit producing, didn't know that was a job. And again, it kind of didn't used to be, actually. So what used to happen is you'd get a director who'd think of the idea, go and film it, and then the director would go into the edit and sit next to the editor and say, no, cut that bit, leave that bit in. Whereas now, we're all too busy, and it needs to get done quicker than cheaper. So an edit producer is a thing. And the thing I really like about it is I think it's one of the most purely creative bits, actually, because it's kind of collage. It's like cut and paste. You've got what you've got footage-wise, and you are, in the purest way, constructing a narrative. And I think that's where it becomes almost most like drama, really, because you're working with what you've got, and it's not about logistics anymore. You're not booking locations, you're not doing any of that. You are working with raw material and turning it into something that's hopefully going to move an audience. And I think that's what's really exciting about edit producing. And it's a good lifestyle because you can do it working from home and in a nice office, and it usually finishes, I mean, not always, sometimes you're doing that at 10 o'clock at night, but it's a bit of a more steady, chill thing, which I think is worth saying from a kind of an accessibility perspective and just a lifestyle choice perspective. You know, not every telly job involves driving around motorways at ridiculous o'clock or over the weekend. So yeah.
You're totally right. And going back to the parallels with the storytelling thing. So, you know, directors are storytellers, writers are storytellers, script editors are storytellers. Like, that's why I think everyone is drawn to it, even though it becomes a very different job. Like we do so as an example, we work on scripts with writers. They might submit something, we give notes, and then we all kind of collaboratively work together. But on a treatment stage, as an example, we might put something together in-house that we've been inspired by an article or a story, and then we take it to a writer to see if they're interested in the territory, or we might work with a writer on something like that. But we did on the last, which I'll talk about later, but we obviously at the RTS, we run the student networking event. And one of the things that we had the opportunity to do at this year's event was we had a few different people in scripted development that kind of, we took along a load of headlines, basically, things that would be a bit clickbaity, things that, you know, we thought would hook in an audience. And then we asked the students to try and build a story around it, and then gave them things to think about, you know, like tone or format or who's your target audience. And then we used the same headline and turned it into 7 different versions of the same show, because that's the fun bit, really. That's the creative bit where you can have a little bit of fun with it. So I'm now going to kind of move into the getting into TV section, because I'm sure that's what everybody probably is most interested in, actually, because I know that when I was at uni, you know, I thought it was unattainable. You know, I went to Salford University, I'm a Salford girl. Everyone said to me, you have to move to London in order to pursue this. And I do not believe that in any, you know, I do think there's a bit of luck involved, but I also think that hard work rises, and that if you are talented and committed to something, then you can make a place for yourself wherever you are. And specifically because this is aimed at the Northwest, that's something that I really do want to drill home. Like I thought it wouldn't happen for me, but it absolutely did. And it's about being committed to the thing that you really want to pursue, and being ambitious as well. So for me, my first job in television was an unpaid internship. I thought I'd walk out of university and just get job offers left, right and centre, and it was not the case. So the first step was an unpaid internship to try and build that experience for my CV. Off the back of that, I got Hollyoaks as a runner, and I used the experience from the unpaid internship to say, hey, please, can I come and do some work experience here? And then made a place for myself. I worked there for a year. And then I always knew that I wanted to be in scripted. So I started doing freelance script reading for theatres and production companies. And off the back of that, I got entertainment shows just to, again, build the CV. And then I managed to become a PA at a company that I really admired that made amazing shows. And that's definitely a bit of advice I would give to anyone. If you're approaching companies and you already know their output, then you already know what to say, because you can be passionate about it. And I was script reading on the side and managed to get development assistant at that company, and then slowly but surely that turned into assistant script editor, and then script editor. I got to work on some amazing dramas, And then in 2021, I was asked to join Leopard as head of development. And that, in a nutshell, it wasn't this great master plan. And I'm sure that there was a lot of being in the right place at the right time as well. But I do believe that if you're committed to it and you're hardworking, then you can get there. So the question that I'm going to put to both of you is, what were your first steps in television? What was the first job, basically? And I'm going to go to you first, Ethan.
Yeah, sure. So obviously it was my last year of university studying documentary film. And I'd done a couple of work experience runs as well. So I did Bargain Hunt back in Cardiff, which is always a great show to work on, to be fair. I actually quite enjoyed it, and definitely like as a first experience as well, because the process of Bargain Hunt is just so smooth at this point. They've just got it down to a T. It's been going on for so many years. It's a very, very steady ship. And I think for me, that was a really nice first experience into it. And then from there, I heard about the Channel 4 production trainee scheme. And that was my first proper step into TV that way. So it's quite a there's a few steps in the application process. It is quite competitive. For me, and I think this is something that you can take no matter what stage of your career you're in, which is, what can I do that's going to separate me from everyone else? What can I do that's going to make me stand out a little bit? And for me, I saw the little golden nugget in that there was a stage in the application process after doing the initial write-ups where you were asked to make a very quick video of what does diversity mean to you. And I knew straight away, right, the majority of people are going to probably just prop up their webcams and probably speak for 2 minutes. And for me, I was quite lucky in the fact that I had friends and had a university facility to go, no, do you know what, I'm just going to make this a film. I'm going to make it a 2-minute film. I'm going to book my student studio. I'm going to write a script. I'm going to film it. I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to send it across. And when we got to the in-person interviews, which is one of the last stages, that was one of the things that made me stand out, is the fact that I'd managed to raise the production value and just make it stand out a little bit. And so from there, I had a choice of production companies that would interview me. They interviewed me, and one of them, Boomerang, decided to take me on. And that was sort of my first step into it. And I'd say as a good tip when you're first getting into the industry is, try and what is a problem that needs to be solved that you can solve with your unique skill set? Because I believe everyone has a unique skill set combined with your personality. For me, when I entered the office, there were a lot of, especially in sort of like my level, there were a lot of sort of like casting researchers, etc., very editorially strong people. But my skill set was a little bit more technical. So I knew the fundamentals of cameras and camera work and how to set it up. So that's how I sort of tried to put myself in there. It's like, right, you can trust me with a camera. Not saying that I deserve to shoot at that stage, because you need to be absorbing as much as you can. You're not going to go into your first production company and straight away going to be shooting. I'm going to be honest with you. But if you want to go into that a great way, it's like, right, I know how to set up cameras. I prep the kit for you, and that's what I used to do. I used to prep the kit, make sure that everything was good, so that when a director came in, it's all there, it's all packaged. Someone's had a look at it, and they, cards formatted, and they can go off. And I built it up from there. Then they allowed me to come onto a shoot. Then that turned into shooting general view shots, which is basically more or less these days just static shots on a tripod, shooting at a building that you shot in just to try and get away into that sequence, to then being the second shooter. And now I'm at a point where, there are often times where I'll be the primary shooter, and I can be trusted with that. But in terms of getting into the industry, for me, and this is one of the fundamentals, is it's always about, I can't remember who said this or where I got this from, but for me, it's always been about, luck, as you were saying before, luck, I think, is when opportunity meets preparation.
Yeah. And
in this case, I was in my last year, I knew I had a deadline for when I needed to get a job. I worked hard on it. I made sure that I was prepared. I made sure that I brought a film out that showed my experience, my creativity, and my passion for it, as well as doing everything else that I could in terms of, work experience and unpaid, so that when the opportunity, or the luck as you would call it, came along, I was prepared to take that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it will work out and sometimes it won't work out, but it's all about persistence. If you truly believe that this is the only industry for you and you're willing to work hard, it's not a question of if. For me, it's a question of when. I think we're in a really exciting stage of TV now, or especially with the amount of schemes that are supporting people in both entry-level jobs to mid-career jobs to, all the way to the most senior positions. There's the big push right now to make sure that everyone feels included. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it's a really positive step, and particularly one that we all need to be taking advantage of.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because I'm a firm believer as well of, when I was doing that unpaid internship and I was making those cups of teas, that was the role that I was being hired to do. So I made the best goddamn cups of teas that you'd ever have. And then when I was trying to become a script editor, I saw an opportunity where I thought, oh, hang on a minute, this is a particularly interesting subject matter. I'm going to go away now and become like the fountain of knowledge on this one thing, so that I can then prove why I need to be integral to that project. And I think it's exactly that, isn't it? You've got to be hungry for it, because it's not easy, but it's also one of the best industries to work in my opinion. So Ruth, what was your first step into television?
I mean, just briefly to pick up on your making cups of tea, people kind of frown, I don't know, have a bad idea about the being the tea maker. But I was talking to one of my APs and researchers about this the other day. It's honestly an essential role on a shoot, because if you don't have food and drink on a shoot for both contributors and the crew, you literally won't make it to the afternoon. So having someone that makes that run smoothly and just goes, no problem, and it's done, that makes you stand out massively, because you're anticipating the needs of the crew, and it's an entry level way, but it just shows that you understand, A, these are just people who are exhausted, and B, you are looking at the big picture and going, I'm seeing a gap there, they're going to be hungry in a minute, they look tired, and it shows you're just tuned in and that you're not thinking about you're thinking about the big picture. And I think, and as well, you don't ever stop making cups of tea in the office. That's just a lovely thing that gets you. It means if you make someone a cup of tea, you can pick their brain then.
You're learning.
Yeah, and I still do that now.
Learning.
Yeah, you kind of bring, if you want something from the editor, you make your brew. I'm going to ask you a favour in a minute. It doesn't stop whatever level you get to. And it's just a good thing to kind of ingratiate yourself to people, and people will remember you if you make just look after them in a nice, generally. But my first step into TV involved lots of tea making, and continues to involve lots of tea making. So it was a little bit sideways. At the moment I work in virtual telly, but I didn't start there. So my background is that I did an English literature degree at Newcastle Uni and really, really enjoyed it. And when I was there, spent a lot of time doing theatre with the Theatre Society, and probably spent more time doing that than I did on my degree, which was really good fun. And I thought, theatre doesn't seem like it has a lot of jobs going, but I bet TV drama would be good fun. So I sort of aimed to do that. That's what I was aiming for. And I started off, because I'd done lots. First of all, I'd done normal jobs. So I'd had jobs on and off since I was 14, 16, where I could, in whether that's cafes. I'd worked in a doctor's surgery. I'd written for my uni paper. I'd done bits and bobs of copywriting. I'd been a charity fundraiser. I'd worked in a pub. That was actually really, really important, first of all, and is not frowned upon. When I'm looking at CVs now on the other end, don't miss out your normal jobs. Your normal jobs show that you are kind of capable, and that's really, really, really important. So I'd worked at step one in non-telly jobs, because I'd done bits of writing, and I'd had a bit of a skill there, much like Ethan said, that's an opportunity that pursued. So the first thing I ever did wasn't actually telly, it was for online. So I wrote we had the opportunity to sort of develop and write. There was an online guide for something that's called I Wonder that doesn't exist now in the BBC. There's a sort of multimedia guide on there, and I did some of the writing for that. So that job came up, and I got that because I was a bit of a writer, and so I did that. And I thought, oh, that's quite good fun. And then through a friend at uni was also trying to work in telly, and she was doing it than I was. So I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm on Facebook." She said, "All the jobs are actually on Facebook. Get on there." And they're all on this group called Facebook Runners. So if you want a job, you've got to go on that group. So I joined that group, and something came up, and it was an advert from Screen Yorkshire, which is a screen agency based in Yorkshire, and they were looking for a runner for a children's CBBC drama called Hank Zipser, which is was filmed in Dewsbury at the time. And I applied for that, and I think, to be honest, I don't think that many people applied. And I'd done some sort of telly-ish stuff, but it wasn't telly, but it was sort of telly adjacent, like trying to do this BBC guide, and I'd done some odd days helping people out on sort of creative projects. And I went along for an interview on the set and got the job. And I was meant to be the office runner in production, so that was completely opposite to what I'm doing now. So it was in and it was on the production side, so that's all the logistics. And now I work in unscripted and I work in editorial. So I started off completely the other side, didn't matter, got in. And then the day I joined up, the production secretary quit. And they said, you're all right, you could probably be a production secretary, couldn't you? And I was like, yes, I can. I couldn't, turned out, but I did that summer. So that summer I worked as a production secretary on the drama Hank Zipser, and it was a sort of baptism of fire as far as first job in telly was concerned. It was long hours, it was tough, it was really, really tough. And after that summer, I saved up quite a bit of money because it was much better paid than actual. But it was, you can tell why it was better paid. And so I saved up my money, and at that time I did think I needed to and wanted to move to London. So I saved up my drama money, and I moved down to London with some pals. And I got a job doing another I Wonder guide, but this time it included a short film. So it was back to the same, because I'd done I Wonder, and it was this new thing. I was one of the only people who'd done it before. And they went, "Oh, you've done an I Wonder guide. Do you know what these are about? Do you want to come and do this one for us?" But this one's got a film inserted into it, so it's closer to telly then. And it was for a company that's now quite big called Little Dot Studios. And they're big in sort of online content creation. So I went and did that for them. And the woman I sat next to was the ex-head of development at Hyper Aspect, because she'd just been brought in, and that's a sort of big factual telly company. So I started doing a bit of development with her because I made her lots of cups of tea and said, "My help, what are you doing? I finished my tasks. Is there anything I can do to help you?
Yeah.
I'd love to, we're actually waiting on something from this exec. Anything I can do for you?" "Yeah, well, you can do a bit of research." So she tested me out, do a bit of research. That was quite good, actually. Gives me a bit more. And then I get kept on. So I was only there probably for a couple of months, and I was literally working week to week. So my initial contract was for 3 weeks. And my exec who I sat next to would sort of go to his boss on the Friday and be like, "Do we have any more money to keep her on?" And like, "Yeah, okay. Yeah, great. You've got another week. See you on Monday." And from there, because I'd done this film, this short film within the guide, which was an interview with Simon Weston, and then I'd also helped out on this other stuff. So I'd actually weaseled my way in and said, "Oh, well, can I help you out with your development? This online broadcaster in the US." "Yes, I can." "Okay, great." So I did some development. I've done development now. "Can I help you out with that? You all look really busy. You're doing some branded content for Channel 4. "Well, so I helped out. Well, now I've done something for Channel 4. And then the next job I got was in development for a company called Screen Channel. And this is my first proper actual telly job. And I was working half in development and half in production on lots of things, but primarily on a BBC Three animation, actually, which was really good fun because I had the research skills. And then I went on to continue working for them in, factual development for daytime, and then eventually in Fake Britain for them.
It's just to pick up on one of the points that you made as well about transferable skills. Like, I couldn't agree more, because, you know, I used to work in customer service when I was working on Hollyoaks. Even
Oh my God, yeah.
I worked in retail because I couldn't afford the train fare. And like the thing that like, just doing customer service, it's made me a little bit more fearless, if I'm totally honest.
Massively.
Now I can pick up the phone and I'm not fazed by it. But if I hadn't have had that experience, I might not have done it. So I'd say any job that you're doing, it's all transferable skills. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of do the thing that I'm meant to do, which is run through the criteria for the awards a little bit. And then after that section, I've already seen that there's quite a few questions coming through. So I will just try and do an overview of this. Basically, a lot of the information is available online via the website. Just make sure that you're clicking on RTS Student Awards 23, not 22, as I did this morning. If you go on the website, it outlines the criteria, and it also takes you the link to enter as well. So I won't go into too much detail, but just for like the big points, basically all entries must have been made between the 1st of November 2021 and the 31st of October 2022. The closing date for submission is Monday, the 7th of November this year. So you've got just under 2 weeks. So if there is anyone out there that has something that they think fits the bill, I would absolutely run at this opportunity because it's invaluable. To give a little bit of context, the awards offer a marvellous opportunity for students to put their creative talents before the critical eye of professionals with recognition of their skills, and even audition for a first job in television, media, and the film industry. Put very simply, it is a fantastic thing to have in your CV, and it will absolutely make you stand out to potential employers in the future. One thing that I'm going to ask our tech guys, Joe and Ben, to do is if you wouldn't mind putting the link to submit entries. I can see it's already happened because they're technical wizards. So anyone that is interested, it's there, but also I'll refer you back to our website as well. Just for some T's and C's, I won't go through the categories, they're all listed on the website, but all entries will be accepted from any students enrolled in higher education institutions and from students aged 16 and over attending further education courses. All category durations have all been updated to a maximum length of 30 minutes, so please don't exceed that. And there is a fee of £25 plus £5 VAT, so a total of £30 per entry per category. I think it's also really important for me to mention that entries in the undergraduate categories will be judged in 2 stages, regionally and then nationally. The winner in each category from each RTS regional centre will then be eligible for the RTS national judging, which takes place in May next year. So really quickly, I'm obviously very privileged because we've got Ethan, who is a former winner. Ethan, in terms of like applying, can you give us any insight? Were you nervous about applying, or was it really straightforward? And what kind of impact has winning had on your career?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of the application process, I can't take too much credit because it was actually my lecturer that sort of convinced us all to apply and made that program, made that really streamlined for us. But we were so excited that to do that. We didn't even think it was something that was possible for us. At that point, we were just focused on making the best film possible. You know, our main goal was to make a film that we were all passionate about and something that we could take beyond our education and take into the professional world as a showcase. And like, look, this is, you know, this is what defines us right now as professionals. This is what we love. And you know, we won the RTS Cymru for best student documentary, which was amazing. And a really fantastic and talented team of students with me working on that. So I can't take all the credit. They, you know, I think we really did all like play to our strengths. And definitely something I would encourage you guys to also, when you're taking those first steps into TV, is to play to your strengths, not just in terms of your skill set, but also your personality type. There's a job for everyone in TV. You know, you might not want to be waking up in a different hotel room every day in a different location. Some people love that. I just so happen to. You know, you might prefer to be in the edit. You might be a more organized person. You might be an extreme extrovert that just loves chatting to people. You might be a little bit more introverted, not to say that you're not a team player at all. I think everyone needs to be in the TV industry, but you might like a limited amount of social interaction. I do really think there's a job for everyone. But to go back to the RTS Awards, the difference that it's sort of made is I think the biggest difference it's made to me is just instilling confidence and confidence in myself, and confidence to know that something as prestigious as RTS has advocated for this film, something that I'm responsible and my team are responsible for making, is a truly humbling experience, and something that a lot of people in the industry also take note of as well. So it's an absolutely incredible opportunity, and you've got no reason not to do it. If you think you've got a film that you're truly really passionate about and that you think is a great story, most importantly, please do it, because it's a fantastic opportunity. And going back to a luck thing, you could say it's luck, you could say it's opportunity, it's preparation. That's up to you.
You've got to be in it to win it, is what I would say. And yeah, just off of that, I was one of the jurors for this year's Student Awards, and I must admit I was absolutely blown away by the standard and the quality that people, like, I think back about what I was doing in university and it was absolutely nowhere close. But I also think that there was such a range and variety as well. It was very difficult in a lot of ways to compare certain things, and yeah, I just think it's a fantastic opportunity. And the other thing that I want to kind of allude to today as well is, I've mentioned it earlier, but we do the RTS Northwest obviously put on events across the year. I'd encourage you all to become members so that you can so you can find out about these things and so you can attend. In May next year, we will also be doing another student networking event. As I say, we did one this year and it was fantastic. I'm completely biased because I really enjoyed it. I loved the day. It was a fantastic opportunity for everyone to network. And, as I say, we did like Q&As, a bit like this, but in person, where we demystified certain things. There was also it was a bit longer, so there was more opportunity to ask questions. Then we also did some more what's the word? Some more like practical skills, I suppose. So as I say, we did the thing with the treatments where there was a few different people from across different companies that kind of gave their top tips on what makes a great story, what makes a bad story, which is probably the more interesting part. So I would say absolutely look into it, see what you think, and if you think that you fit the criteria outlined on the website for the Student Awards, you've got to be in it to win it. So have a go, because yeah, I was so impressed by the quality, and there's still people that were successful or even just nominated that have stuck with me. So I would say it's absolutely invaluable experience. Okay, so we've only got 10 minutes left, so I am now going to cheekily look at my phone and see if there's any questions. So the first one I have here is kind of directed at everybody. How important is networking in the industry? I will just say really quickly, it's very important. That's why things like the RTS are so fantastic, because they do connect. Like, as an example, us three didn't know each other before now, but I'm sure we will now going forward. And I wouldn't say it's about who you know. I think that's a really cynical way of thinking about it. But at the same time, if you're getting out and you're meeting people, you're learning more about the industry, you're finding out about jobs, finding out about what's shooting and what's coming up. So, Ethan, do you have anything to add in terms of networking?
Yeah, in terms of networking, it's just massively important. I mean, some people find it, really natural. You naturally find that you start speaking to people. You get some people that don't necessarily like to brag about what they do, and then definitely one of those people that I had to learn to sort of promote myself in a way and be able to say I've done this, because it's just not natural to I'm as a personality. Yeah. But getting into that habit, because you do need to do that, especially when you have contacts say, hey, can you come in for a chat? Spyrex, never a chat. It's never a chat. It's an interview. Prepare for an interview. But yeah, it will come naturally to some. For others, they might need to be more on top of it. I've known people before that have a networking spreadsheet, another good spreadsheet,
Oh,
where they'll have a list of all the people that they're in touch with, what the last email was, what did they talk about, when the last contact was, and basically feel free to email them if you have any existing contacts, just on what you're up to in general. You don't need to be emailing them every week, but if you have a major event, say, you know, you've just taken part in a film, or for example, if you're doing something like this, then you just want to keep people in the loop, as well as just put in a copy of your latest CV. And that tends to work for some people. So yeah.
And just to jump in really quickly, but from a production point of view, I know that, I mean, again, talent, it's about being talented, of course it is, but people in TV want to work with nice people. So if you've been to shoot with someone and you've just been like, you know, accommodating, collaborative, friendly, guaranteed that person's going to bear you in mind for other things. So sorry, Ruth, over to you.
No, totally agree with that, because you can't teach someone to be a decent person. You can teach them to use a camera, you can teach them how to write a call sheet, but you know, if they're delightful and helpful and sparky and attentive, you know, that's amazing. I think networking is massively important, but again, like Ethan said, it doesn't necessarily have to mean being in a big room full of people if that's not your thing. It doesn't have to mean a formal networking event. Sometimes it means that, but primarily I think in real life networking means just building a network of people who you know and building actual relationships with actual people. And I think that's really what networking is. And it's massively important, because when people are careering, quite often we advertise almost, we try to advertise almost all of our roles because that's the right thing to do. Often we don't get the right people. So then I'm on my WhatsApp group. So I did a training course 2 years ago, and all of us stayed on a WhatsApp group. That WhatsApp group has become a sort of recruitment centre for everyone going, does anyone know an AP? Does anyone have a runner in Nottingham? Does anyone know a PD in Scotland? And you're going, oh yeah, actually I've got a pal who might be free. They're working, so you might not have seen them online on Talent Manager, but they are actually free this week, and I know that, blah, blah, blah. You know, so those informal connections, there's two things that are going on there. Like, you've got networking with the big bosses and, you know, saying to Talent Manager at True North, for example, hi, I'm graduating, I'm a really big fan of Say Yes to the Dress. Could I come in for a coffee? Because I know you might not have any roles at the moment, but I'd love to talk to you about what I've done and just get to know your company a bit more and see if you might have anything available in the future. And you put yourself, that's networking, putting yourself in front of someone and saying, please can I have a coffee? That's networking. But then also it's peer networking. And it's hanging on to those people who are at your level, because a lot of the mates who I met when I was a researcher or an AP, well, we're producers now. Some of them are starting to be series producers. So now we're starting to kind of hire each other.
Yeah.
And that's a very different, you know, that has taken that long. Actually, it feels, when you're a researcher, that feels like it's going to be 100 years away, but it's like 5 to 10 years away. And actually it happens quite quickly. So it's about building those connections across as well as up, I would say.
And everyone's journey is so different, right? So like the best advice I was given in the beginning was don't compare yourself to anybody else, because, you know, I could have somebody in my team and then in 5 years time, I could be working for them. And like, it is just, when I say the right time, right place, I suppose what I'm getting at is, you know, I feel very lucky. So I got to work on a Russell T Davies show. He was my favorite writer when I was growing up, like, and now he remains my favorite writer. It's one of the questions is recommend a piece of television. And I suppose the point that I'm making there is like, I luckily was working at a company that he had a great relationship with, so therefore I got the opportunity to do that. Had I have not been working at the company, I might not have got that opportunity. So it's one of them, isn't it? It is a little bit about being in the right place at the right time. But I also think that if you've kind of targeted a company that makes shows that you love, then the hard part, you know, that is the hardest bit in a sense, isn't it? So to go into that question, if you guys were to recommend a piece of television as an inspiration for an attendee to watch, what would it be and why? I'm just going to say off the top of my head, I'm going to say Doctor Who, as in the reboot beginning with Christopher Eccleston, just because I think it's incredible television, but it's also a demonstration of how TV production can be at its finest, because the things that they achieve, you know, it's incredible. And I'm so excited to see what he does when he goes back now with Ncuti as the Doctor, because it will be so completely different. So that would be my suggestion. But Ruth, what do you think?
Okay, well, I'm going to be biased and I'm going to recommend something that we made. but I didn't make it, so I can kind of toot its horn without being vain, because I wasn't responsible for it. But my colleagues at Screenhouse made an astounding documentary called Gentleman Jack Changed My Life.
Wow.
It's still available on iPlayer. And the reason it's amazing is because it shows the benefit of getting, of diversity on screen and diversity behind the camera, because it's an amazing piece about women at different stages of their lives coming out as gay and lesbian as a result of seeing Gentleman Jack. So it shows that there's the representation in the drama had a real impact on real people, and we have people coming out on camera in that documentary because of the trust they had in our team, because we had a team I think it was almost all women and almost all gay, queer, lesbian women making that film. And that authenticity resulted in some quite and kind of trust and relationships resulted in some extraordinary telly, and a really positive experience for the contributors. You know, it was beneficial to them. We had a great sort of screening afterwards where they were talking about how actually some of them, the first time they'd been in a room with other people who were identified in the same way as them. So yeah, watch Gentleman Jack Changed My Life.
That's a great answer. Yeah, TV that moves people, TV that causes actual change in the real world. Couldn't agree more. We've only got 2 minutes, so Ethan, this is probably the last question, but if you had to recommend any TV, what would you go for?
Oh, in terms of documentaries, I mean, it has to be, the one that stands out to me most is a documentary called Lucy the Human Chimp. It was on Channel 4, and it's just an absolutely fantastic bit of, if you want the best pure storytelling, it's, you know, at its best in terms of narrative and story arc, you know, what's the problem, the climax, you know, and also having story endings that are perhaps a little bit more subtle. You know, it doesn't have to be this overly dramatic thing. It can just be simply about, and in this case, it's, for me, it's a story about relationships and how relationships grow and how relationships change over time. And in this case, we have our protagonist, Lucy, and a trainer, and they develop such a close bond together, even when Lucy changes, and she's basically trained as a human, raised in a human environment, and then has to rediscover life as a wild animal. So yeah, just watch that. It's absolutely beautiful. And Draw Them In, which I'm going to put my hand up and say is entirely biased, but I promise you'll be worth it. You can share my seasickness.
I love that we've all said really different things as well. I think that's great. So, I mean, we have come to an end of the session. The thing that I'd love to end on is to basically remind you all that the deadline for entries for the Student Awards is the 7th of November. So if this has kind of spoken to you, if the things that we've said have chimed and you think that you've got something that fits the criteria, check it out on the website and absolutely give it everything you've got, because we would love to be seeing that you've been successful. So I'd like to thank my panelists. Thank you very much. And I hope you've all got a lot out of this session, and thank you so much for finding the time to watch. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.